Is that on mute? Is that Ashley?
Hello.
Hello. Hello. You know me, I love technology. It's my thing.
Morgan, if you can hear me, will you change Alderman Hughes' name?
Pardon me?
You're good. I just want Morgan to adjust your name.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The mayor is muted.
Good evening. I would like to welcome everyone to the September 27th Board of Aldermen meeting. I now call this meeting to order, and it is tradition. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd ask everyone to join in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to
To the flag
the
of the United States of America,
and
to
to the
the
republic
republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
indivisible,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Thank you. I would ask the city clerk to do a roll call for attendance purposes.
Alderman Allen,
Here.
Alderman Even,
Here.
Alderman Holman,
Here.
Alderman Hughes,
Here.
Alderman Mortland,
Here.
Alderman Perot,
Here.
Alderman Weezahan,
Here.
and Alderman Whitmire.
Here.
Mayor Ream is presiding, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you. I seek, relative to the minutes, I seek a motion and a second to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And any discussion or amendment to the minutes?
No, fine with them.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? So the motion carries, the minutes are approved. I would ask the city clerk to enter any records or recognize any speakers.
We had no speakers sign up to speak or address the board tonight. There was one email that was forwarded to the board earlier today, reference commissions. I reached out to that person and asked if they wanted it attached to the minutes and did not hear back. So this is just my letting you know that if I do hear from them tomorrow about that, I will attach it. Otherwise, your distribution will stand.
Mhm.
And that's all I've got.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to let you know that on the October 11th meeting, I will intend to appoint Mike Sawyer from Ward 4 to the Ways and Means Committee. He's been a member of Town and Country for 17 years, is interested in fiscal responsibility, has served in his subdivision, I think Cedar Spring on the Homeowners Association, and he was put forward by Alderman Allen, and I would give her the opportunity if she would want to make any comments on Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Mayor. This came about, and I would like to at this time mention Mr. Prost, Bob Prost from Ward 4, who served on Ways and Means for many years. So he was a Ward 4 resident. And after our last Ways and Means Commission meeting, he had communicated he was ready to come off the board. So this is a Ward 4 replacement. And I have worked with Mr. Sawyer on the Cedar Springs board before. I've known him to often be, always be fair, very collegial to individuals, good problem solver, and I think he'd be a great asset for our commission and the city.
Thank you. Alderman Perot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to concur as well. I know Mike quite well, having served on the board of Cedar Springs as homeowners association, and very pleased to see these coming on to Ways and Means.
Great, thank you, thank you. Next, I would like to recognize the board's opportunity to provide reports if anyone is so inclined. Alderman Mortland.
Yes, the Police, Fire, and EMS Commission will be meeting tomorrow, September 28th at 4:30 on Zoom. And then we will actually be meeting the following month in person. But I also would like to congratulate Chief Cavens for the extending the offer and for our new police officer, Joel Laney. So thank you, Chief. If you have anything else you'd like to add.
We swore him in bright and early this morning, and he's immediately started his 12-week field training program with Officer Alex Fluter. So we're excited. He's young, energetic, and he's got a tremendous resume, and he'll be a huge asset to the department.
That's great. That's great. Alderman Whitmire.
Yes, Mayor, I'd just like to report that the Planning and Zoning Commission will meet on Wednesday, September 29th, which is a reschedule from our normal meeting time. So there will be a work session at 6:30 and the regular meeting at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Alderman Weezahan.
Thanks, Mayor. The Parks and Trails Commission met last Monday night. Had a good conversation about the kind of starting conversation on the budget. Talked about this year's budget and projects, a little bit about next year's. So that was a good beginning to that. We had former Alderman Skip Mange join us as well to discuss a project from the Historical Society of presenting a sign for the Worth Grove and recognizing that family on the property at Town Square. And then also, I just want to report some of the commission members had, and I know I touched base with it at a prior meeting, they still had some concerns about some of the responsibilities coming from the Conservation and the Art Commission, and how that will, relay into Parks and Trails. And they wanted to ask that if there were any commission members that the board as a whole or the previous two from the Arts or Conservation Commission felt would be a good fit for Parks and Trails, that, in some capacity, to kind of help adjust with some of the new responsibilities, to keep that in mind and to make those recommendations, because they would just like a better understanding of what the new responsibilities will be.
That's a good point. I would think maybe at some time you and I could sit down and go over that in some detail. Great. All right. Alderman Holman.
Thank you, Mayor. The Public Works Commission met in the month of September, and we appreciated the attendance of you, of course, attending our meeting that evening and meeting all of our commission members for Public Works. Many of them have served over a couple of decades, and also Alderman Sue Allen attended. And our points of discussion that evening, we are continuing into our October meeting as well, which are our road and storm fund with a reflection of 2021 as we move into 2022. And then we also are discussing the management partners performance audit. And what I'd like to highlight here at this point in time in that discussion is that Mr. Tim Randick, who is our Public Works Manager and the city staff liaison, removed himself from our meeting at that point in time when we went into discussion, because he wanted the commission to have the ability to speak freely and openly about policies, procedures, and that department. And as I mentioned, where we have a lot of longstanding serving members, he didn't want those relationships to get in the way, which I applaud him for that. And we are really able to have an open discussion. And I look forward to coming back to some type of overview and input from our commission, probably in our November meeting, our November Board of Aldermen meeting.
Thanks. I would say that it was pretty apparent that especially the long-serving members on that commission have a very high opinion of Tim, as they should. Okay. All right. And Mr. Shelton, I believe you have a report.
Just briefly, Mayor, thank you. Just to bring the board up to date relative to the resolution you all adopted for the Park Drace Playground grant application. That application was submitted and they have a committee that reviews those. Expected, Ms. Nixon tells me, mid to late November that we would hear back from them on a decision. And then relative to Topping Road, Mr. Zeltman, Mr. Randick will be meeting with MoDOT and our contractor on Wednesday of this week. That will be the pre-bid meeting. I'm sorry, the construction meeting, pre-construction, where they will have set the dates and some scheduling. And then we will update the board and the residents involved.
Thank you. All right. Next, then we'll go to unfinished business, bill number 2143, the board as a whole. Without objection, would the city clerk read the bill for the second time?
Bill number 2143 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a second addendum to the Fire Protection and Ambulance Service Agreement with West County EMS and Fire Protection District that was originally approved by ordinance number 3963 and first amended by ordinance number 4412.
Thank you. Would seek a motion to approve in a second
So moved.
by Alderman Portland, and any seconds by Alderman Holman and Alderman Allen, and open it for discussion or amendment. Alderman Holman. I think you're muted.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're good.
I would ask our city administrator to inform the board of when, at what year did the city take over these services and why? And that might help in making our decision, just one of the data points as we make our decision on what way we want to move. We could have a little bit of historical information here.
Sure, I believe it was 2017, and it was as a result, as we talked in the work session, that the fire district was no longer by state statute authorized to conduct residential fire inspection. So the decision was made, the city needed some support with our building inspection department, the one person that was doing the building inspections. So it made sense at the time, and then the city could pick up that commercial fire inspection permitting revenue in addition to the residential, and therefore filling that seat.
Thank you.
And I would, Alderman Whitmire, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. So I was wondering who is doing this work now, given that our employee is no longer on the job?
No, that's a great question, Alderman. The fire district has agreed, and they have, even though we've collected those revenues, they are doing these inspections. And then we have agreed to reimburse them in the meantime, pending the approval of this agreement. So the fire district is handling these inspections.
Go ahead, Alderman Whitmire.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. So we're covered at least for now. So a couple of other questions then. So while our former employee was working in this role, I guess my understanding is that we were unable to complete certain work either because we didn't have the right equipment or we didn't have the right personnel skills, and that West County will now close that gap. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
And could you describe kind of what it was that we weren't able to do that West County will be able to?
A couple items that came to light since I've been with the city were the fire hydrant inspections, which requires a certain amount of staff and definitely some intricate equipment to open up the hydrants, flow test, lubricate the hydrants, get them closed up without affecting the flow in the main. Sometimes you could open a main and it would actually can burst some lines. So the fire district does this on a regular basis. We were not doing this. So this is something they'll take on as part of this agreement. The other thing is that with these commercial fire inspections, I don't want anybody to think we weren't doing what we were supposed to be doing. There were just some gaps in the coverage because that's what the fire district does and not typically what the city does. But the other gap was with pre-planning. So designing where all the fire exits are and the sprinkler systems and the Knox boxes. The fire district does that on an ongoing basis. We weren't particularly having all the equipment and software to do that appropriately to get that loaded in the CAD system.
Okay.
A couple of examples.
Alderman Whitmire.
So just to follow up again then, Mayor, so that's the good news. They're going to close the gap on some stuff that we couldn't do before. The bad news is we were giving up about $43,000 in revenue, right, under this plan, and we're going to save about roughly $16,000 from what we used to pay the employee for part of their time to do this work. So we're paying quite a bit of money to close that gap. And I just want to make sure that everybody's that I've got those numbers right and that everybody is aware of that situation. Would you agree that that's right?
I would go ahead, Bob, then I'm gonna have a comment.
I don't disagree with the numbers. I do feel it's important to stress our core competencies here at the city are building inspections, public works, projects, and maintaining all the new construction, both residential and commercial. And that's what we need to be doing and let the fire district do what their work is to be.
Yeah, I mean, the only comment I would have is that in a city like Town and Country, the thought that somehow because of lack of maintenance, your house is on fire and that fire hydrant doesn't work. I just think that's something that for the extra dollars, I just want to, I think there's just certain givens that we need to have, and that's one of those. I also think that this also does enhance to a degree our working relationship with West County Fire and EMS, and I think enhancing that relationship is a reasonable thing to consider also in the overall picture. Alderman Whitmire.
One last follow-up then, and I won't debate that point. I just want to make it clear to everybody, this is going to cost us money. And then the last point, and this is another good point, my understanding is that the fee structure that West County EMS charges is roughly equivalent to us in terms of you just kind of put your thumb in the air and look at the numbers. It's not like they're going to start, driving our landowners crazy with crazy fees and so forth. Is that accurate?
I'd say that's very accurate comparing the fee structures. Yes,
right.
Excellent point.
They're almost equivalent, right?
Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate it. And Mr. Shelton, thank you.
Comments. At this point, I would ask the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Alderman Mortland,
Aye.
Alderman Weezahan,
Aye.
Alderman Holman,
Aye.
Alderman Perot,
Aye.
Alderman Hughes,
Aye.
Alderman Whitmire,
Aye.
Alderman Even,
Aye.
Alderman,
Sorry.
Alderman Allen.
Aye.
The bill passes unanimously and becomes ordinance number 4457.
Thank you. Next bill number 2144 Without objection, would the city clerk read the bill for the second time?
Bill number 2144 is an ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 125, Boards, Commissions, and Committees of the Town and Country Municipal Code, specifically by enacting Article 3 to establish an Economic Development Commission.
Thank you. I would seek a motion to approve in a second. Alderman
Motion to
Perot,
approve.
thank you. And a second,
Second.
Alderman Allen. And as we talked about in the work session, I think there are some questions relative to standing this board up, that there's not necessarily opposition, but questions. And I think some of that revolves around should Ways and Means take a look at this? And what are the parameters of what the commission does are maybe a little wide, but I would like to open that up to have the aldermen who have either reached out to me or others who have questions why don't we have a little discussion relative to those questions, and then maybe, like I said, we can have some answers now, but we can work on solidifying that if we continue this. So Alderman Allen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could, I also would like to be added as a sponsor to this, if it's not too late.
I would have to check with the city clerk, but I assume that's fine.
That's okay. Without objection, before the vote is called, anybody can be added to the sponsorship.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I would like to reiterate, yes, I have talked to numerous individuals, and I think it would be very helpful for the Ways and Means Commission to be informed and be allowed to comment, provide some of their feedback on this ordinance. Overall, philosophically, I think that it's always good to do everything we can for our economic development of the city. And I know that has been going on. I know Mr. Shelton and I have often attended the chamber. I know that's referenced in the ordinance. One of my concerns is where the staff support would be, who would cover the extra work. We know we have a very lean staff in the city, so that's a concern. And then for this developing the economic development master plan, I'm assuming that might require some consulting work. So overall, I would think that some of the process as we would move forward would require some budget support, either from additional staff, consulting with regard to many of the actions. So I did talk to Alderman Perot, and I do appreciate, and I've talked to numerous people, and I do appreciate the ability for all of us to share our opinions and work together and end up with something that's going to better the city.
Thank you. Alderman Hughes. I think Alderman Hughes, you are muted.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking at page 2 of the proposed ordinance, and it talks about resident involvement, educate citizens. I just have it sounds kind of condescending. I would rather change the language to increase awareness among citizens on the importance of commercial development, something to that effect.
Okay, I think this, yeah,
Food for thought.
sure. I don't think that's going to cause any heartburn. I think that's fine.
Okay.
No, I agree. In fact, it's been mentioned by a couple of other aldermen in previous conversations, so you're definitely in line with the thinking. So, I also would like to acknowledge, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, please, please. Alderman Perot, go right ahead.
Alderman Allen's comments, it has been brought to my attention and that there is some overlap between the documented responsibilities of the Ways and Means Commission versus the Economic Development Commission. And I think it's important that I meet with them, with Alderman Allen and of course the mayor, to discuss what they believe is the proper division of responsibilities if this commission were to be stood up, so that we can get the ordinances in line with what we're trying to accomplish. So I really believe that we need to have that conversation before more any decisions are made.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very reasonable.
So I will let you know when the conversation's over that I'll be moving for a continuance so that we can continue to do the further review and consideration.
Thank you. Alderman Weedland, did you go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to just say I've had a lot of really good conversation with Alderman Perot and working through some of my questions. A couple things that during the phase of kind of figuring out where it's going and what the commission could be, that some questions I still had were kind of touching on Alderman Hughes' point of educating citizens of, in this commission compared to other commissions, what would the role be of the commission and commissioners in that exact regard of, educating or communicating with citizens and residents in whatever it's defined as, is this more of an outreach? Or is this something that residents would come to the commission for? Where does that kind of overlap go from what we do as aldermanic responsibilities of communicating with residents versus the commission level of communication with residents? So that was one thing that I had. Then also during been thinking more about the economic development master plan. Do you see having that a little bit more outlined prior to bring to voting on this and having it approved by the board, or would that be something that you would still see being created by this commission after it's approved by the board?
Alderman Perot, do you want to go?
Thank you. My current thinking prior to our discussion was that the commission would create that with potentially the assistance of consulting resources. So when I originally brought this forward, I indicated that there would be some money needed to get this started up, whether it was going to be for consulting services or surveys. This is not going to be a zero cost commission. There will be costs associated with it. So, so to answer your question, my thinking was that we were going to engage professionals along with the commission members to create the draft of the master plan that would then be presented to the board for their review and changes.
Thank you. At this point, Alderman Perot, would you want to put a motion forward to continue this? Oh, I forgot. I didn't see it initially. Alderman Whitmire, go ahead.
That's because it wasn't up there. Thank you, Mayor. So my thought was just from an implementation perspective, that it would make sense to do this initially as a work group underneath Ways and Means to resolve on what you would carve out and potentially, strengthen some of the wording and so forth, and maybe make a little progress before we start writing an ordinance that says everything that it's going to go be. And that, it might end up being a different scope initially that that you intend to carve out or whatever, just as a way to get started without worrying about all of these details that we'd have to record in an ordinance.
Well, I think that, and I'll let Alderman Perot speak to this, but I think that was the point that Alderman Perot made just a few minutes ago about getting the feedback from Ways and Means, and myself and Alderman Perot meeting with Ways and Means and kind of discuss those issues. I think it's a valid point, and that's something that we will meet with them, see if that makes sense, and going forward that way, as opposed to starting up a commission. But I think it's all on the table right now, and that's why we want to kind of go slowly initially, because I like I said before, I really, if it comes to the point that we decide to do this, I want this to be something the board can be enthusiastic about and support, going forward. Alderman Whitmire.
And then, thank you, Mayor. And then one other question is, what is the rationale behind permitting non-citizens on this commission? I understand we might want to get some people outside of the city involved in the work of this commission, but the notion of putting commissioners on there that are not citizens.
And I
Can you
think,
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think we can. I'll let Alderman Pro speak about it too, but I think the thought was that, and I think we've rethought it. I think initially, there were some very big players in our city relative to like Target, Whole Foods, et cetera. And some of the people in those companies that might be on the commission might not necessarily live in town and country. So it's something to think about. But I think I've had more, and Alderman Pro can speak to this, but I've had a lot of feedback from the aldermen that, making sure whoever we pick from those companies lives in town and country, I think is a pretty reasonable ask. Alderman Perot.
I concur.
Okay.
I mean, we will, if we need the input from executives from other corporations that aren't living in town and country, then we'll solicit that.
Yes.
With them being a commissioner.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And as far as addressing your first comment, I want to phrase this. I'll hold. I was trying to remember the exact wording of your first question.
Oh, I was,
Alderman Whitmire, please.
if I may restate it, I think it was something to the effect of have you thought about, or as an implementation method, instead of writing the ordinance now, instead creating a work group under Ways and Means. I didn't say a subcommittee. I specifically chose not to use those words. A work group under the direction of Ways and Means that would work on this for a while and start assembling, the essence of what this is, and maybe move forward on the plan to a certain extent before we try to codify it in an ordinance. And that's what you were going to try and respond to, I think.
Yes, thank you. Very succinctly done. Better than I would have. The concept of a work group is a good idea. But as far as standing up the full responsibilities, or maybe even partially, without the right individuals engaged, my concern is that if we get much past a consulting group coming in and helping us trying to lay this out, how do we attract powerful people, both from a business retail perspective and individuals within the city residents, to participate and say it's a work group or it's a committee? I'm not sure we're going to be able to attract the right kind of people if we can't tell them that it's a multi-year commitment on a commission that has some influence into information being provided to the Board of Aldermen. and not being filtered through another commission. So may not be a big issue, but I see, I mean, it bothers me.
Thank you. Alderman Weezahan.
Is there any just a rough estimate of what the cost might be for a consultant for these plans? And if there is there any comparison of what these plans would be compared to the comprehensive plan? You know, and what questions might be asked differently than what's in that document?
As far as the city's master plan, this is going to be much more detailed related to economic development. As far as the cost, I don't know yet. I haven't discussed that with the city administrator or the mayor in terms of going out and trying to solicit that kind of information before we even had the, conceptually agreed that we were going to have a commission.
Any further discussion at this point? I would ask Alderman Perot to make a motion to continue to October 11th.
I move to continue the bill to the meeting of October 11th to provide time for further review and consideration.
I would seek a second.
Second.
Alderman Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
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 The motion passes. Thank you.
Excuse me.
New business. Without objection, would the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
Mayor, on 2145, we can do it before or after I read it, but we'll need a sponsor on the next
Well,
couple
I
bills
was
as well.
thinking Alderman Orland would sponsor this one. I'm sorry.
Bill number 2145 is an ordinance approving a purchase order with Stalker Radar Applied Concepts for a radar message trailer and amending the 2021 budget by increasing a capital improvements fund expenditure account and appropriating funds to cover the increase.
Thank you. Bill number 2145 is continued to the meeting of Monday, October 11th, 2021 for the second reading and consideration. Next is bill number 2146. A sponsor for this, I would think, would be, well, it could be Alderman Perot. And without objection, would the city clerk read the bill for the first time? And also, go ahead, Alderman Holman. Oh, I'm sorry.
And Mayor, can I just suggest, since 2146 and 2147 are items that will go on to our 2022 budget,
Right?
that the board as a whole might want to consider sponsoring. But if not, I would be happy to sponsor both.
I think that's reasonable. Unless someone has objection, we'll have both these, the board as a whole.
Yes.
And without objection, would the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
Bill number 2146 is an ordinance accepting the bid of St. Louis Select Landscaping for the 2022 grounds care program and authorizing an agreement for same.
Bill number 2146 is continued to the meeting of Monday, October 11th, 2021 for the second reading and consideration. Moving on to bill number 2147, again sponsored by the board as a whole. Without objection, would the city clerk read the bill for the first time?
Bill number 2147 is an ordinance accepting the bid of Corvus Janitorial for 2022 custodial services at city-owned buildings and parks and authorizing a maintenance agreement for same.
Thank you. Bill number 2147 is continued to the meeting of October 11, 2021 for the second reading and consideration. Next is the warrant list. The warrant list is the $1,589,740.19. Seek a motion to approve in a second.
So moved.
Alderman Allen, and a second.
Second.
Alderman Perot. And any discussion or amendment? Alderman Hughes.
I'm looking at page 1, the pet waste solution, the the bags. I think I can go back to my donor and see if that individual will reimburse the city for those.
That would be excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderman Allen.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate that that information that we frequently get from Alderman Hughes about these bags. It does seem that we do continue to pay a good amount of money, or somebody pays a good amount of money. I have seen people on the trail at Longview pull out a whole bunch of those things at once. So I'd just like to say, I think it's very convenient for people from all over the world to be able to get their puppy, disposable puppy waste bags from us. And that's very generous of us.
Haven't you been to a restaurant and watched somebody take all the sugar packets and put it in their pocket before they leave?
It does happen, yes.
Yeah, that is for sure. That's for sure. Any other discussion? Or Alderman Holman?
Thank you, Mayor. And it is on this same topic. With regard to the dog waste station bags, it seems to be a reoccurring expense. So I was just curious to be updated on our policy or program. Do we have a program where residents or subdivisions sponsor waste stations? Do we have an active program right now in our city?
I don't think so. Mr. Shelton, what do you think? Or Ms.
Mayor, if it's okay with you, I defer to Ms. Nixon, please.
Yes, I'm correct. Thank you. Ms. Nixon, thank you.
We do have people sponsor those stations. Right now, we only have one of them sponsored. So
How would I
Yes.
find out as a resident or a subdivision
Yes.
about sponsoring a station if it's, close proximity to my subdivision? How would I learn more information about that?
how about a new marketing piece?
Sounds great. And so with that, I'm going to make the assumption that it would be a 12-month or longer type agreement for, and it would be just the cost of the bags in that particular station.
That's the way it's set up now, correct?
Okay, great. And then within Ward 1, and I think your commission has discussed this, I think we are down to one waste station in our area, and that teeters. Well, there's one outside of Twin Farms, and then there's one on front of Topping, so that teeters Ward 1, Ward 2. But other than that, we do not have another waste station in Ward 1. We've had several requests to put one near Clayton and Bope, and if that's not an option, we had one in front of New Owner School that I believe was taken out by a vehicle, and it wasn't replaced. So if you could bring that back up as an agenda item to your Parks and Trails Commission, we would love a waste station here in Ward 1, and I will absolutely help you find a sponsor for it.
Great.
And then I do have one other question, and it's regard to trees in the right of way that are dead and need removed. Do we have a total count? Because this seems to be another reoccurring charge on the warrant list. So do we have a total count of how many trees we need to remove in this calendar cycle, or trees in totality? And are we programming that out between this year and next year? Or how are we going about running those numbers and accounting for those numbers?
Mr. Shelton.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. And Michael can correct me if he's got anything to add. The Tom Thousand, our Public Works Director, continues to monitor these. Unfortunately, some that are alive and he's trying to save are dying. So this is a really growing, unfortunately, it's a dying problem. But
Right.
The emerald ash borer is here, and it's attacking these trees in the right of way in these subdivisions. And as you all know, those are our responsibility when we accept the street maintenance. So we do not have, I don't believe we have an exact count, but we just continue to monitor them, and as they're dead, take them down, especially those that have any dangerous implication.
And so when we take those down, we're using our on-call service, is that correct?
Right. Yeah, that's a negotiated price, correct?
And are we eating through that this year because of these trees? And should this become a line item for next year?
Definitely.
Okay, so that would go into what fund?
That would
Come
be
out
in the
of what?
road fund.
Okay, so we'll need to talk about that. We will talk about that at our next commission meeting, as I'm sure you will within Ways and Means. So we'll probably ask for some numbers on how many have we taken down thus far. And is there any way we can get some type of estimate?
We'll ask Tom to give us an estimate. That's all it will be.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Good
Thank you.
question.
Thank
I
you.
would just comment on that too, that, yeah, I'd like to see the numbers of what they cost per tree, depending on the size of the tree, et cetera. But I happen to know one person who has his own little company that I think might be, we might get a better deal. So we can talk about that. We can talk about that. Alderman Perot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question. There are 2 bands listed with a 10-9 date. Is that a typo? Or is there really 2 bands?
It was a battle of the bands. I guess you weren't there. No.
Mhm.
just kidding. Ms. Nixon, go ahead.
It's for our upcoming fall festival. And so we'll have 1 band at Longview and then a jazz ensemble at Town Square.
Thank you.
Alderman Holman.
While we're on that topic, can you just provide, and we probably have community listening, and can you just provide a little bit more information about exactly what October 9th is? What's happening?
Sure. So we've done some rebranding of the fall festival. So we have a fall fire and ice because we're having fireworks at 8 p.m. So at Longview from 5 to 8, we'll have Rogers and Neenhouse band playing live, local restaurants, some inflatable games for kids. Parking is at Mason Ridge Elementary, and we'll have a shuttle that runs between there, First Church Christ Scientist, and Longview Farm Park. For the events at Town Square, we'll have the jazz ensemble, and parking is at Town Square, and then also Good Shepherd Church on Mason Road.
Right.
I have a question for Mr. Shelton. Is Wild Crush ever going to open? At least it wasn't open Saturday night because I thought it was supposed to open this weekend. Went up there,
They
but
did.
that was dead in the water.
Oh, I thought they were opening over the weekend as well.
I
On
know. They
Sunday.
did.
They did
They
open?
did. So
When?
it was a soft opening, and it was from noon to 5. And
Okay.
I think in a couple weeks they'll have their food, but they're just going through a soft opening right now. So they were open, but
So
I don't know when they're going to expand their hours.
So
it's
you
soft.
drink at noon and finish by 5.
So
Okay.
you go get your nails done, and then you walk along the back patio. You sit down and you order a glass of wine.
It's a deal. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any other discussion of the warrant list? And how about a voice vote? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Hi.
On the only thing I want to mention, I should have mentioned it earlier, is hey, I appreciate the civil discussion relative to bringing up the Economic Commission. Sometimes these things can get kind of heated, and I appreciate the fact that the discussion was so civil. So I appreciate it. Does anybody else have anything else they would like to bring up at this point? Alderman Hughes.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Cavins, we received an email from you about some of the issues that went on recently in the city. And I was wondering if you could kind of give a synopsis of that. And I would appreciate that.
It's called Lock Your Car.
Lock your
Sum it
car.
up. I appreciate it, Alderman Hughes, and unfortunately, it's the same message that, once again, we battled the monster of some residents keeping vehicles unlocked over the weekend, specifically Saturday night into Sunday morning. We investigated 2 stolen vehicles and 5 burglaries. to vehicles. Unfortunately, all vehicles were unlocked, valuables were inside, and those vehicles that were stolen, the keys and key fobs were left inside. As I've stated many times in discussion with all of the board, both collectively and independently, and several residents, these types of crimes are crimes of opportunity that are easily preventable. We know and have supporting proof that the criminal element takes the path of least resistance, and simply locking car doors will cause that criminal element to move on. So I guess just as a reminder to everyone listening and watching that public safety is a team effort. And I encourage everyone to follow our strong presence on social media and practice and spread, more importantly, practice our message of how important it is to lock your vehicles in your home. And I do want to thank all of the board. All of you are very gracious of putting all of our messages into your newsletter, and for that, we're grateful.
Thank you, Chief.
If I could just add one other thing too. I went with the chief and Mr. Shelton to the St. Louis Police Chiefs Association prayer breakfast the other morning, and I think there were roughly 700 people there.
That's great.
And it was a pretty moving experience to see the names of the first responders who have made the ultimate sacrifice, serving their communities. It was a very moving morning. I felt very privileged to be there. And again, I want to thank not only Chief Cavins, but all of our police force and fire force for all the great work they do to protect us. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Even.
Two things. Chief Cavins, do we still have those signs that we had out? I believe it was last year, the lock it or lose it.
We do, Alderman Even, but funny you should mention that. We did another inventory of them, and they're rather weathered, so there'll be another order of them placed here with this week to get some replaced. We've had them out so much, just they're probably about 18, 20 months old, and where they have them out routinely and they just need to be replaced.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
And I have another question. We were talking about the Fire and Ice Fall Festival. Or Ms. Nixon, do we have kind of a rough budget for that particular event? Like what our cost is, what amount comes from sponsors or is covered from sponsored, and what is our town and country out of pocket cost?
Oh, Ms. Nixon, go ahead.
And if you want me to just send you that spreadsheet, I can outline all of the expenses and what we have as sponsorships.
Okay. Do we have a fair amount of sponsors for this event?
We have Marie Davila as our presenting community sponsor. They're paying for the fireworks. So that's one large sponsorship that we have right now.
Okay. Are there other sponsors besides just that one local business?
No.
Okay. Just seems like it would be something that would be fairly easy to obtain, so that we don't have this out-of-pocket expense. What are we doing to recruit sponsors for this event?
We post on our website sort of all of the sponsorship opportunities, and then posted in our newsletter. I have one other potential sponsor that I'm working with, but they're not confirmed right now.
So we're posting on our website and then we put it in our newsletter. Is there anyone going to businesses in the area that would, maybe try to recruit some sponsors? Okay. I just think that's something that we should look into. I think there are plenty of businesses out there that are eager to sponsor, whether it be something as small as $250 or as large as what Marie Davila has done over many, many years. But this is an out-of-pocket cost that I don't think we have to pay for. And I think that we should be actively recruiting sponsors so that, they can provide services like they have in the past. But from my recollection, years past, it was you provide a service and you get your booth for free. So unless that's changed, I think we need to look at how to offset these costs, because if I remember correctly, it was roughly potentially a $25,000 event. Given that we don't have a large excess amount of funds, it's a great community event, but I think there are plenty of sponsors in our community that would be more than willing to step up. So I think we figure out a way to actively recruit more people to sponsor outside of just posting on our website and just putting our newsletter.
Alderman Perot, thanks for those comments. Go ahead.
Thank you. I thought that one of the bands was partially or almost completely covered by a sponsor.
That is correct.
Okay.
Alderman Allen.
Thank you. I do appreciate Alderman Evans' comments. Actually last year, I think prior to finalizing the budget, the Ways and Means Commission was not recommending to have this expenditure in this 21 budget. But I believe our board then elected to go ahead and put it in the budget. But I do agree, and I would assume Ms. Nixon has individuals who have benefited, or businesses who have benefited or supported the city in the past. So at some point, I think that would be much appreciated.
I agree.
Possibly, if we do get an economic development commission, that could be one of the things we get involved in.
Yes.
Possibility.
Yes.
Right. Alderman Even.
But wouldn't that fall under whatever committee? I mean, I appreciate the economic development group potentially working on something like that, but wouldn't that fall under the existing commission that this is planned through? So Parks and Trails, or I guess now since Art isn't available, is that staff that should be recruiting that? Is that people on that commission that are going out? I mean, it should be a group effort, having planned many events for schools and things in the past. This shouldn't be a difficult thing. As long as we provide recognition, there shouldn't be a reason we can't cover the entire $25,000. It's very easy to obtain.
Ms. Nixon, if I could ask you, the 25,000, does that include the cost of the fireworks too? Or is that was the fireworks in addition to the 25,000?
It includes it.
Okay.
So we have to budget it as the expense.
Right.
And then the revenues, right, recognized.
And what are the fireworks? About 10,000 of the 25 then, roughly?
7,500.
75. Okay. All right. I think Alderman Even makes good points. I think there are ways we can find to the other 17.5 or whatever, find some way to get that covered going forward. I think it would only make sense. We look into the possibilities.
I mean, we still have plenty of time to get that, achieve that for this particular event. It just takes I would imagine within a week, we could have that taken care of very, very easily.
Any other comments on the warrant list? Alderman Weezahan.
Thanks, Mayor. It's not particularly pertaining to the warrant list, but just to follow up on the conversation earlier about some of the incidents over the weekend. I agree that everyone shouldn't be locking their doors on their vehicles in their house. But do you have any? I mean, if there's a criminals coming into town looking for the path of least resistance, and those cars were locked, do you feel that they'd continue looking for additional? And where I'm going is, do you feel that it's increasing in town? Just the number of incidents and the activity in general. I had an alert on my phone about another incident at a shopping center today. And just wanted to get your take on that.
I will tell you, Alderman Weezahan, that from the mid-year report that I provide to the board, we were pleasantly pleased that everything has been down for the first half of the year. With that being said, there has been an uptick again in the West County corridor. We have, over the past month, have been lucky that they haven't made it to us. But unfortunately, within the last 2 to 3 weeks, we've had a couple nights where we've had vehicles stolen, but then the vehicles off of Barn Bridge, we did recover. I think there is an uptick. All of our patrol strategies are based upon hotspot policing, not only hotspot policing on the crime trends, not only for our city, but we are in constant communication with especially our bordering communities. But again, I can't stress enough that we do have physical evidence, video showing that when the criminal element walks up to a car and it's locked, they move on. Now, whether they move on to your neighbor or they move on to another subdivision, they move on. And if we continue to practice that behavior of assuring that we lock all of our vehicles in our homes at 9 o'clock before we go to bed, when we're done running the kids all over the place and we're calling it a night, they will move on from town and country.
Thanks, Chief.
Just a follow-up, is there, and I'll continue to advocate to lock cars. Is there, obviously, we have National Night Out next week, but is there anything that you can see that'd be helpful for the community as a whole to continue to do, other strategies to deter some of this?
You know what, Alderman Weezahan, I think we've done a significant amount of communication through social media. The board does a tremendous job for us through the newsletter. When we go knocking on doors, conducting neighborhood canvases of these crime scenes, we spread that message. When either myself or another member of the command staff or one of the officers talk at your subdivision meetings or your ward meetings, we pass out the pamphlets, we talk about the statistics, we have the lock it or lose it yard signs that Alderman Even has spoke about. It's just, it is a mindset. That's all it is. Town and Country is a very safe community. That's why people like to live here. But there also, with that comfort level, comes somewhat of a level of complacency that it's not going to happen here. And it's not going to unless we invite that criminal element. And as I've told all of you several times, that criminal element communicates just like we do in our jobs. They go back to wherever they're from and go, hey, easy pickings in Town and Country or Ladue or Frontenac or whatever city that they've hit, that we've got these unlocked cars. And they're communicating because they want it easy, they want a quick score, they want to get in and out.
Yeah. Good points. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
How about a motion to adjourn and a
So
second?
moved.
Thank you. And a second? Alderman Even, thank you. Any discussion? Let's say all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Thank you and have a great evening.